Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol, in a place far, far away.
Yeah, greetings from Las Cruces, New Mexico. Whoa, there I went on the sheet. And we're off. Yeah, so home of New Mexico State. I'm about to go check out the facilities here in a little while.
Have you been taking in some sporting events on your trip?
We have saw Astros game on Monday night. Saw the El Paso Chihuahuas play last night. All the years
Cool.
that I had covered teams that were in their league, I had never actually been to El Paso for baseball. I've been
Wow.
there a few times, but I never managed to do it for baseball. And last night I got to see a game in El Paso. It's the
That's
little
very.
things.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, it is several things going on here. First of all, it is National Creative Ice Cream Flavors Day. Okay, are you creative with your ice cream flavors?
I am creative with what I put on them. But the flavor itself, I'm usually like give me a basic beginning. But like my kids love all that stuff. They're all over it. And we were just in Myrtle Beach, and Myrtle Beach is like the king of creative ice cream. It was pretty cool. They come out of
Yeah.
there's ice cream stores all over Myrtle Beach. It's their like one of their big industries.
So I don't know what it was like when you were growing up. Baskin Robbins is a nationwide chain, but that's pretty much all I knew as a kid. For the
Yeah,
most
me
part,
too.
right? And that and the good humor truck.
Right, that's right.
You're not gonna get too creative with a good humor truck, right?
Right.
And Baskin Robbins is kind of like, here's your 31 flavors or whatever it is. You choose that, and I guess you can throw on some toppings and stuff like that. But it has ballooned into an incredibly large industry. I have no idea how much ice cream is sold, but you got all these gourmet ice cream shops, and you can put all kinds of stuff on them. You can do all kinds of stuff with the ice cream. So that gives some individuality to people doing it, and
Yeah, I
prob-
enjoy it. I don't. I try not to overdo it, but
prob-
because like
prob-
we're to the age where you might like ice cream, but they don't really like you.
that could happen too. You could develop kind of a intolerance for that. That
Yeah,
as you get older, there's a lot of things that happen to your body, and you're like, but I used to love that or do that or eat that.
yeah.
Not going to happen. Um, I
Smaller
will.
portions.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm all about smaller portions because I guess I'm just trying to maintain or lower my weight while I fight the cancer, and it's just kind of this ongoing struggle. I still have this sweet tooth issue, that weighs me down a little bit, but my meals are generally relatively light. I mean, they're a lot smaller than they used to be. So, I think part of when the gym used to be close by before they closed it down, the Gold's Gym, I'd go over there in the morning and then I'd go over there again in the afternoon. And I don't have that extra 30, 40 minutes in the afternoon just kind of doing, uh, you know, cardio. I think that's definitely part of my problem here. So I've gotten really lazy in the afternoon about I should after I eat I should really do something, walk or do something. But anyway, um, so anyway, the so yeah, I mean, ice cream flavors. I mean, the only thing is that I'll go to a buffet once in a while with my wife, and use the machine, and then I'll do something like throw in a brownie or throw in a piece of cake or whatever, and that's about as creative as I'm getting these days. Uh, but
Yeah,
but I
I gotcha.
kind of like that.
I hear. Yeah, that's
All right.
and like you're talking about the eating thing. It's interesting because like Marty's on the other end of that scale, right? He's playing college football and he's trying to get big and strong. And like we go out to eat, and Marty's like, I want 7 of those. I mean, he doesn't really do that, but I mean, it's that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
like
you
I'm trying to
that,
like scale it back, and Marty's trying to scale it up.
that sounds like the perfect candidate to spend a lot of time at Chicken Roost Deli in Annapolis with that monstrous shake and burger thing that they challenge
Yeah,
that they have, which people finish, but they don't finish without upchucking in order to get
right,
through the whole thing.
right.
So, and yeah, that's the thing. Well, yeah, we know athletes have to put on the calories. They just got to eat.
Yeah,
So
he's also our most adventurous eater. He'll try pretty much anything once, and he catches on to all kind of stuff. Like he's trying to get us to do bureau tacos, where it's like a Mexican roast beef, and then the taco shells you put them in the broth actually, and then you fry them up or whatever. It's like a 3 or 4 step process. But you see all these bureau tacos now on the menu places. He's trying to get us make that at home. We're trying to figure out how to do that at home.
huh, interesting. All right. Also, so this is it. This, the sign behind me, right? This is it. We're coming up to July 4th. It is going to be a very hot Saturday, probably dangerously hot if you're going out to see the fireworks in on the mall. And the fireworks, I understand, are actually going to take place later in the evening than normal. On top of that, so it
Oh, really?
could be. Yeah, I heard that they're not going to start till like 10:30.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So, I wonder if that helps though, because if you're going to the mall, which I've done that one time in the 38 years I've lived in Washington, but I worked at Heritage,
Yeah.
So at Heritage you have a party on the roof.
Right. Great.
It's good food, and it's all taken care of. And the cool thing about it is, you can see the one on the mall. It's a decent view of it, but it's not a great view of it. But you can see the community fireworks shows all around the Beltway. You can see 30 or 40 fireworks shows. There's a time in there. The sweet spot like 9:30, 9:40. There's literally dozens of them going on at the same time. So, unless you're on top of a building in downtown, you don't really get to see that and appreciate it. But it's a very cool thing.
Yeah. So I don't do the mall per se. So my lifetime, I can say, Federal Reserve. When they built their new building, which was 13 stories high, when they opened it up, we got to go basically to the rooftop area. So that building is right behind the main building, right? And that's right off of Constitution Avenue. So you want a good view, you're going to get there. I mean, it was slammed with people, obviously, and I was about 13 or 14 years old at the time. And the only other time, I don't remember what year it was, but it was decades ago, I went to Leadership Institute over in Clarendon and watched it from their rooftop. So that viewpoint's pretty good.
Yeah,
But that's about it. But that's about the only way I'll ever do something like that. Is like send me to a rooftop. The crowds are not. There's still going to be crowds, but not like the mall crowds, and you get a pretty good vantage point like that. But I've been there. I've done that. I'm an old guy. It's hot. I can't take the heat like I used to anyway. So I need controlled climate. Even in a controlled climate, I can sweat. So he's just like, I'm better off just being at home in the long run for that.
I've sort of like want some variety on it. So like I've been to baseball games, and I've been to, community events, and the big ones and the little ones. And it's pretty cool. Like all of America does something, that reflects like that little corner of the country. And it's really cool. It's really good. It's a time we all kind of come out and celebrate together. And I'm sure that there will be people who don't celebrate. We're about to get ready for all the commentary from the people who's like, not our America, and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So, yeah. I mean, the baseball game thing too. Just before we move on too, is just that the Bowie Bay Sox. Well, now the Chesapeake Bay Sox after they renamed them. I mean, they have a lot of fireworks nights. After the ball game. And that's a pretty decent show, actually.
It is. It really is.
They've been doing it for years. Yeah, they've been doing it for years, And as we roll into the 4th of July, I mean, this is going to happen across the country. Now, Montgomery County fireworks are banned unless they're done by the county, things like that. And, I mean, I remember as a kid, I can't even do sparklers with things anymore, but I remember you could have, there are friends of mine that had bottle rockets and a bunch of stuff. And, all these things are outlawed now. But, in the West,
Montgomery County, man.
Yeah, they have a big problem because the drought is so bad out there that they're canceling a lot of fireworks shows because they don't want to potentially set off a wildfire. So they have to kind of balance that as well. I think the major ones will probably be fine, but you can't just have a fireworks show anywhere. You got to have
You gotta have some
running.
room for that stuff to land, and
Right.
and you gotta have some room for those explosions to go a little bit sideways, because that's not a perfect operation.
Right. Things will happen. Things always happen. That is not a perfect situation. So, anyway, all right. So we have, we're about to celebrate America's 250th birthday. I think it's going to be a great weekend. I mean, there's been the state fair, Trump's big state fair on the mall. Some have panned it, some have loved it. I didn't bother to venture down there for it, but I mean, I have mixed emotions about doing this whole thing. It seems, in some parts, it seems kind of schlocky or cheesy, but on the other hand, there is kind of a nostalgic feel for state fairs, and it's kind of neat to see if you get booths, from all 50 states. If you really get it going and doing it right, it can be kind of neat and introduce state fairs to people who've never really been. It gives you at least a little bit of a feel.
Yeah, that's one of the things. Is like, that's not very few people here have been to one, and if you've been to one, I mean, in the DC area, it's either Maryland's, which is, it's in Timonium and it's kind of small, and Virginia, they don't even have it every year. Some years they just don't have one, right? But like where I'm from, Shreveport has the Louisiana State Fair, and it's it's a whole part of town, for 2 weeks. It's a big party, and there's food and music and rides and attractions, and and most of the people there come over from Texas. They do the Texas State Fair, and then they do us. And so Texas is ginormous. It's at the Cotton Bowl, centered around the Cotton Bowl. That's why the Cotton Bowl is there. That's why the stadium in Shreveport, Independence Stadium, is there. It's like, these are state fair stadiums. And what you're supposed to do, because it's in that part of the country, it's in the South, right? So they have a football game for the state fair. Now, Louisiana, we used to have, Louisiana Tech played Northwestern, and then they had a few other opponents come in and so forth. And they're trying to scramble to get the game back going again. But Texas State Fair is Texas, Oklahoma. Every year they play in Dallas in the middle of the fair. So if you watch the game, there's a fair going on right outside the door, which is just as big an attraction as the football. So, and like we went in Minnesota one time, like we saw a pig be born, we saw, and they have something in the Minnesota called curds. Do you know what curds are, Don?
I have had cheese curds.
Cheese curds.
Yeah.
It's like, if that was widely available here, very few people would be able to walk, That stuff is good. Holy cow.
Yeah, I don't know. A friend of mine who's since passed away, unfortunately, and he was from Wisconsin. He says, "You've got to have these cheese curds." So he bought me some, and I think it's like a lot of things in my life. I need to kind of take it in and figure it out a little bit and get used to it. It's just not my thing, but I'm willing to give it another go. Just look. I mean, I'm still trying to get to learn to eat kimchi. Okay, and it's like I may get into that before I die. I don't know, that kind of thing. So yeah, no. So I didn't think I could learn anything on the show in particular like that. But that you just taught me something about the state fairs down there that I had no idea. I knew that the state fairs were huge in the South, particularly in Texas, but I didn't realize the football connection at all to this.
Wow, yeah.
So that's actually kind of interesting. Almost makes me want to go. But I won't. I know the only problem is that I know my wife will not go. So it's like, I have, if you have a bucket list or a list of things you want to do, and if any of the sporting, Spencer and I put together a list of things like, we'd love to do at some point in time. Whether or not we'd ever achieve it would be, like get to a World Baseball Classic or go to a College World Series and stuff like that. Go to a Cubs game at Wrigley Field. things like that. Not going to happen with my wife. I might be able to get my daughter-in-law, to go to some of these things. She's a little more adventurous. She doesn't understand any of these games very much, but Spencer been teaching her a little bit along the way. But my wife has she's like zero interest in those kind of things, especially if you've got to be sitting outside anywhere for an extended period of time.
Yeah, he was an enthusiastic sports junkie. He'd
on
that stuff.
yeah. I mean, there's something to be. I just you have to really be rabid. You have to figure out. You have to know exactly how to get your tickets for stuff like that because they get gobbled up really fast, all that kind of stuff. So, but I was going to leave it to him to figure all those logistics out because he was just good at all that stuff. All right. Anyway, moving on to news. We actually have news this week. Things are kind of. I mean, there's back and forth. There's some stuff going on in Iran. There's some missile firings and drone firings and stuff like that, but it hasn't really changed the dynamic yet. I mean, gas prices are heading down. They're down about 8 cents since a week ago, which is good, but they're still, I think that's still 67 cents higher by AAA figures from a year ago. They're moving in the right direction, but we've got to get it down a lot further. And hopefully
we saw a lot of below threes in Texas.
Yeah, Texas is always cheap to me. I mean, I always think you get to Texas, you're like,
I'll tell you what, I'll tell you something else too. It's good to be, a big policy divide, right? Because like Pennsylvania, that's an oil state too, right? People forget it. Oil exploration in the U.S. started in Pennsylvania. First oil well ever was in Titusville, Pennsylvania, in the U.S. And in fact, the first oil well ever. Right? It was the first time they invented it. That's where they dug it. So. And natural gas, a lot of natural gas there, right? But they have very high energy taxes. So, like, anytime I'm going up there for basketball, whatever, that last town in Maryland, I stop and fill out, who would thought Maryland is where you go to dodge taxes? But it's the truth. You go in there and it's 30 cents cheaper a gallon in Maryland than just across the line in Pennsylvania. So, and like, Mississippi, it was low. Louisiana's unfortunately a high tax state now. It's very, it's high taxes. It's high. It's like 10%, 9% sales tax. And that's how they make their money. Speeding tickets, so like it's really low rent way of extracting money from people. And there's not a lot of money, which is money leaves when it gets harassed like that. But one of the things, I want to go back though, because you put on the schedule, you said something about, the Russian-Ukraine war. Like you talk about, that one's not, that one's sort of like you're right. It's kind of in a stalemate, and while Trump is, actually, I think what's happening is while Mossad is trying to find the leadership for another round of, reuniting with the virgins, because I think what their plan is to find that next layer of leadership, the people in charge now, and flip the board one more time is what I think is while we're waiting. Right, ships are getting through the Straits of Hormuz, 55, 60 ships a day. They say they're going on the Oman side, right, instead of the Iran side. I don't know. I guess that works. The whole thing is only like 30 miles wide, so it's not like there's armaments that can reach you on the Iran side, but not on the Oman. Right. They can all shoot 30 miles, all that stuff. But the Russians are losing the Russian-Ukraine war right now. They're in some serious trouble. The Ukrainians have crippled Russia's power infrastructure to the point that like Crimea is dark, right? They took Crimea over during the Obama administration, and now it is isolated and there's no power. There's no road lights at night. And, there's some other places in that part of Ukraine where they're starting to turn out the lights. They're cut off the power. And, the Russians are freaking out. And, Putin said the other day that they don't have what they need to overcome this, that they have some energy and troop problems that they can't overcome in this. So, they're going to have to seek a settlement. They're going to have to come out and say, start thinking about how to get out of this. So, and it's all been done with, drones and, low cost technology that they developed themselves.
Yeah, that's one of the amazing things about the Ukraine-Russian situation is just that, I mean, we've talked time and time again about Ukraine's resolve in this and how they've been, they've been hit hard. I mean, civilians have been
Yeah.
killed, cities have been decimated, just buildings destroyed and whatnot. And so but drone technology has really enabled them to make up for the lack of ground troops and other things.
Right.
They get help from us with armaments and stuff like, there's materiel going to them, but not ground troops. And they're fighting against this flood of Putin's opened the prisons. He did, he's brought the North Koreans. He's tried all kinds of tactics to just keep throwing troops at Ukraine, just trying to overrun them, and none of it's worked. But
Right.
this Crimea situation is fascinating because it's like, who would have thunk this? That what was that? Was it 2014 or something like that? They took over Crimea or something like that. That here we are 12 years later, and the script is being flipped almost.
Yeah, they can take it back very easily.
Yeah, they may actually get it back instead of Putin getting more territory from Ukraine, which looked like might have had to be the case, though Zelensky has been holding out. It might have to go the other way, that Putin might have to say, look, yeah, okay, I'll give it back. We're going back, we're going back to the to the lines we had before. Let's end this thing before anybody else gets killed, and before so we can turn the lights back on and get my energy supplies and everything, infrastructure back up and running. But 1,590 days roughly by my count. This is becoming a slog. This is this is what we have discussed over and over again. This is not what Putin wanted. We figured 2-3 days is what you probably thought he had this. You could go in there quickly, do this. They would just cry uncle and it would be done. Right. And they haven't. And despite all any accusations of corruption or whatnot, I still want to give take my hat off to Ukraine for how well they've handled this whole situation.
They figured it out. They stood their ground, which I think people will do. When you're talking about your homeland, where you're from, people will stand their ground. I mean, so if you're not fighting there, you're not going to fight at all, right? So hats off to them, and it puts Putin in a spot, because if he retreats, right? If he says, okay, this is over, we're not doing well, we got to go. I mean, think about what happens there. He's done, right? And Russia's not going to respect a leader who retreated out of a war, started a war he couldn't finish.
Yeah. So that's I mean, it has all kinds of connotations for Putin on this. So it's very interesting to see how this is coming along. Not what Putin expected at all, and supporting Zelensky seems to be the right path. Because he has held up very, very well on this, and they may get more of their country back instead of having to give more of it up.
That's
so
right.
we'll keep watching.
I think Trump was right to keep us out of the ground war aspect, but have us supply the material.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that is absolutely right. All right. So yesterday was the huge day. We hit the end of the month, the final day of the Supreme Court's term. They won't return until the first Monday in October, and they handed down the last of their major decisions yesterday, and there were quite a few. Big one on birthright citizenship. So I have a lot of mixed emotions about this, but my problem, I think, with this from the get-go with the Trump challenge was that it was an executive order, which was he's doing it basically with his pen, without there's no input from Congress, there's no law being passed. Birthright citizenship.
Well, I mean, that's what the ruling was, says, is that if Congress can fix this, you're not guaranteed birth. It's not a right. It's not a divine right. Congress wants to come back and say, we're not going to let these people in. We're going to treat this differently now. They can do it. The Supreme Court was explicit. It's like, we're not going to make a law here that Congress needs to pass. Congress needs to take the action and straighten this up.
Yeah, I mean, really, I really think to stand muster, you really actually have to amend the Constitution in essence, and to
I
do.
don't think so. I think what they
I
said
don't.
yesterday was just this is something Congress needs to do. You can't assume this without Congress passing a law saying it's okay.
I think those things. I think they can pass a law, but I think somebody will bring a challenge to it. I think if you amend the Constitution, which is very difficult, then you enshrine that in there. You know, the problem I think one of this is that a lot of time, when the Constitution is a wonderful document, it's probably the best document in the world. That and the Declaration of Independence gives us our basis. There isn't anything like it, but yet but it was written at a different time, with different things. And I think when Clarence Thomas said that it was really meant for slaveholds, slaves and things like that.
Yeah, it's
I
historically
understand.
accurate.
Yeah, I was historically accurate. Um, and then what really gets me though is just that. So, so you have all these Democrats, all these liberals, just oh you can't do this because these people were here, it's immigration. You can't just kick them out and stuff like that. But you know how much stuff are we seeing right now on the internet of Harry Reid, you know
Yeah.
33 years ago or something like that. I think it was 1993, talking about this issue and talking about people coming over, and basically having this birth tourism.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Why are we rewarding people for doing that? With citizenship, and it, the Democrats have, that party has changed, right? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
a great deal where you have the leaders from 30 years ago saying things. I saw a clip of Dianne Feinstein talking about all the people coming into California getting on Medicaid, and in essence it's
Yeah.
Medicaid fraud, but it was driving up the cost of Medicaid in California, so they were having all kinds of problems due to this kind of situation. uh, I don't know how big a problem it is today as much as it was before, because I think President Trump has done an excellent job of basically turning the spigot off on illegal immigration for the most part. I mean, I think if they want to go do it, they'll figure out a way to do it. But by the fact that we're seeing this illegal immigration numbers dropping substantially, I don't think you're going to see those numbers have any substantial effect, except for the fact you've got a bunch of, you can call them anchor babies or whatever, that may be living here. But for most parents, I mean, if they have a baby here, they're not likely to leave the baby and then go and then get deported without the baby, unless they
That's the
have.
problem. Now you're starting to figure it out.
Yeah. So there's, I mean, this is so multifaceted, in terms of
Yeah.
how to
It's but it's 10% of the babies now. It's not just 3 or 4 people. It's a lot of people doing this. So we do need to, and that's another one where they said you can fix it by statute. But you do got to fix it by statute. We're not going to do it for you.
Yeah. So I mean, I think this is going to be a fight that continues
Also,
on.
it is gonna continue. And here's the thing, like Charles Krauthammer said years ago that if there's there's 3 aspects of border enforcement, right? There's how many people do we let in? What do we do at the border? What do we do with the people we catch here and who snuck in? How do we handle all that? That's the 3 big questions. And his thing was, if you stop the traffic in the border, right? If you really shut the border, then that takes the pressure off and you can have a rational discussion about the other 2. So to me, we're at that stage. So the birthright citizenship may offer an opportunity to, open a wider discussion. Like, what do we do with the dreamers, right? And because he can now, some of these things, they can now, one of these rulings is he can now kick out all the dreamers, right? So he was empowered to kick out a lot more people, and they've already started. So if that's what you're against, Democrats, then let's talk about, let's straighten this up. Let's you give some on who we kick out, and we give some on this, right?
Yeah, and for all the for all this Sturm and Drang and all the arguments that the left had about about immigration and all the policies that the Republicans and Trump administration were trying to put into effect, how has that hurt us at all? I mean, have people suffered at all? I mean, I think we needed to do something. We just can't have an open border policy. It made no sense whatsoever, and you know I'm sure there are political prisoners, or people who are facing just dire circumstances, because politics worldwide, there are some pretty bad regimes, but on all in all, you had a lot of other unseemly types coming in at the same time. So we're getting control of our borders, and I think in general we're better off for it. And I don't see a lot of people complaining anymore. Not like they were at the beginning about this. I think we talked before about even the whole ICE. They've kind of toned down how they're going about doing things, but I think that they're still out there taking care of business, but they're not attracting the headlines anymore. And I don't think that the left's any argument about, oh, we got to get rid of ICE. I think it kind of falls flat now, because they're just not seeing as much action in terms of getting the news crews out there and stuff like that.
Yeah,
That
there's a
isn't
lot of action that's just been removed from the public, scene.
Yeah, yeah. I think they moved on from that. They don't understand. It's like, that's if you're thinking about that being an election issue in the midterms, it might be in some locales, but it's not a national
Yeah,
issue. It's
yeah. You're going to see the picture of Renee Good and Alex Petty a lot. Who were murdered? Well, the cops looked at the film and said they weren't murdered, right? And so you're going to have that argument brought up. But most people have already moved on from that, right? Whatever you thought about it, the car was aiming at him, car wasn't aiming at him, whatever. We've moved on. It's the people have decided, authorities have decided the guy wasn't in the wrong. And one of the things they're doing, I don't know if you see this, but on Twitter or X, like every day, there are multiple people posting his food. This is the murderer of Renee Good. This is, Paul Ross, I think his name is a, the ICE guy who actually shot her. So like, here's his photo. You see him on the street. This is the guy, and it's like, okay, I see you out there. I understand what you're doing.
Yeah, I think the Democrats, as I look down the line here, because we're now on July 1st, so we've got about 4 months before the elections, the midterms, and I think they're losing steam on issues to gather around. That the ICE thing had its run. Affordability, yes and
Yeah,
no.
that's going away as an issue because the gas prices are coming down. And when
Yeah,
the gas prices come down, everything else comes down. So
yeah, right.
it's not going to go to 12 cents for a steak, right? But it's not going up. It's not getting any worse, and you can tell that like the trend's in the right direction.
Yeah, it's moving. It's moving in the right direction. So I think that takes away yet another leg of a stool, or whatever you want to call it, that for them to try to figure out what to do. And so
I don't think people care how much money Trump's sons make on crypto. I just, the Democrats keep talking about the Trump's making all this money, $2 billion. His sons are doing hoogly googly that no one understands, and it makes money. And they've always done hoogly googly that made money, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's no there.
And look, they capitalize on the name. The name's a big name. It's been around for a long time. It's
right. It's a brand,
Right. It's a brand. What are you going to do?
I love the people that tell me he's a terrible businessman. He's had 6 businesses go bankrupt. Well, Trump owns more than 600 businesses. So you're talking about a 1% failure rate, which is pretty good. And I think 3 of the 6 were basically Atlantic City collapsing, right? He went big into Atlantic City, and Atlantic City just sort of let it go, right? They stopped maintaining the city in a way that would let it be a gambling mecca, right? So now it's gone away. And so that's 3 of his 6. He made a miscalculation on Atlantic City. He didn't understand how corrupt they really were. So, the rest of it's incidental stuff.
All right, so that's one issue. Another one, there was one a little earlier too about the mail-in ballots. So as long as they're postmarked, even if they arrive a few days late, this is this is one of those issues where, for me, it's like the states run the elections and they set the rules. I would
Up to a point. Federal elections,
right.
That's not totally that's not
Well,
totally
but it begs the question about when you have a state and federal election at the same time, which often happens. Who's really, what rules really,
federal
operate
rules.
at that point. Yeah,
federal rules prevail in that.
So do you go to do you go to a point where, like, okay, you have a federal ballot and you have a state ballot. The federal ballots must be, in their possession by that time, but the states, if they have postmark and whatever, are we going to have to do something like that in order to do that, unless the states come around and say, yeah, we're going to change our rules, which the blue states will never do.
Right.
To have the ballots, received as of election day, plus the fact that it's election month or whatever it is now.
Well, there's a couple of things on that. So on that ruling, first of all, the ruling says it has to be postmarked by election day, right? That was not like Pennsylvania obviously did not pay attention to that rule in 2020. That's how they had 117% voter participation in their election or whatever it was. So just saying that, it has to be postmarked that day. And if you it leads to some possibilities for corruption. But if you vote by election day and that's your method of voting, then it should count, right? I agree with that, right? And that mail, it should arrive the next day, right? Because the people who count your vote should be so close to you that I mail it on Tuesday, you get it on Wednesday, right? There's no excuse for that not to happen. So if you tell me, okay, we got so many mail ballots out there that we have a Tuesday election, we can't say Tuesday night, but Wednesday night you can, right? And what we should insist on is whatever you say Wednesday night, that's what we're going with. Oh, we found 700 more. That's too bad, right? This is the one that counts, because that's what happens is it gets dragged out, and then you can start throwing fraudulent ballots. There's also, courts have approved Trump's plan to create special envelopes for ballots. So he sends it to you in an envelope, right? And you don't get one unless they have certified you're a U.S. citizen. So you can't vote until they've certified you're a U.S. citizen. You get your ballot, you send it back in an envelope, right? That they give you in there, right? That they provide. So, and if it doesn't go away in that envelope and come back in the other one, then it's a void vote. So you can't have these 70 ballots in a nursing home when there's 5 people in the nursing home, right? And you got 65 ballots that they fill out like they want. So they're really like the really heart of the late ballot corruption. They cut into the heart of the late ballot corruption. It's not over. It's not done, but they did hurt those people, those kind of attempts.
Well, and I think the governor is Mississippi, right? He said he wants to go ahead and change the law in Mississippi so that it has to arrive by election day. And that that's something when you're in a red state and if you're controlling the legislature, you should be able to get that done. I mean, that should not have a material effect in essence, but it would align things with how things should be. Once again, I think I said this before. I would prefer we go back to how it was before. Not that I really want to go down to the polling place anymore because I've gotten lazy, but I would, if the law was back to where it says, if you had an absentee ballot, you have to apply for one, you have to give them a reason, and then you get an absentee ballot and you can vote that way. Otherwise, you must show up at the poll, early voting, I don't know. I mean, it helps maybe take some of the crush off on election day in some places, probably.
But
So
like it's like in Virginia, we had this Virginia AG race last year, right? So it comes out in the last week or two before the election that the AG said all this racist stuff and wanted to kill the minority leader and the Virginia House and all this kind of kill his family. I hope his family rots in hell and all this stuff. Like, if you'd have known that right before you went to vote, I don't know about Democrats. I don't seem to have a lot of conscience about this, but maybe a few people would have said, that guy's kind of got a screw loose. He may not be a good pick for attorney general. We're not, we're still going Spanberger governor and all that stuff, but maybe this guy's a little crazy for this, but they didn't, right? No, you can't reverse it because it's already in there, and I think it's like your whole public body of work until election day should be on trial there, right? So the idea that, a month earlier, I've made up my mind, there's no information you can put in that'll change it. I think that's reckless. And I think a lot of these, these races are, and what you're going to start having is races where the Democrat, there's two Democrats and one Republican, and one of the Democrats and the Republican are not that far apart, but the other Democrat is a long way off. That's what, like in New York now, you have, Dan Goldman lost. This Chevalier lady in New York City won, I think, New York 7 or whatever, knocked out an incumbent. Diana DeJette in Colorado got knocked out the other day. So these are longtime members of Congress that these people are knocking out. So, we're going to have to make a deal with we're going to have to deal with two Democrat parties essentially in the very near future. One of people who we're not for what they're for, but we understand what they're for, and one of complete crazies. I mean, a bunch of crazies are winning elections in very, very blue districts right now. It's not spread to anything moderate at all, but right now you have some people that are far to the edge of the American political system winning elections.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing about this, the early voting, at least from where where I am in Maryland, is just that the turnout is generally pretty light. Okay, it hasn't. I don't think it's ever been very heavy, and so they spend a lot of money for this 10-day period or whatever of running all these election sites, and they don't get a lot of voters. So you kind of wonder how much is it worth the money to do that at all. I mean, psychologically people I think will like it. I mean, I early voted before they said we could vote by mail, but I'm totally against California where everybody in the state gets a ballot. That's just plain stupid. But have the absentee ballot. Like I said before, you got to give them a reason. If you're an expat or a military member overseas, you get whatever the extra grace period or whatever you need, because postal service kind of thing, that's a little bit tricky.
Yeah, no one's trying to screw the military out of their vote.
Yeah, so that's fine. I mean, and that's the way it was when I was growing up, is that you had a medical excuse, you were living out of the country, and you were a service member overseas, and that was pretty much it. Yeah. And now it's a free for all. It's like, so the whole voting system in the United States is just totally crumbled on us. Yeah. Opening the door to a lot of hinky things potentially. So we've got to put that genie back in the bottle and get back to where we were. I thought the system was fine before, and then the Democrats, I blame the Democrats in a large part because they're the ones I think that really started a lot of these vote by mail and all these other schemes. Try to
until it occurs to the Democrats that this is making them lose elections, they're not going to change.
Yeah. So
no known principles or ideals.
All right. We still have. We also had another major decision though, which was on the transgenders in sports. This is a big deal. And
to be clear, what they said was states can make rules prohibiting guys from playing girl sports. Not you must, everybody must, but if state wants to make that rule, it can make that rule.
Right.
So
Right. So it allows them. So the case, the case originally, I guess, was originally brought by this girl, in West Virginia, who identified as a girl when she was in third grade. Wow.
yeah,
Hmm.
that's a parent problem.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't say that. I don't say that because
Well, I mean,
you don't know. Like there are a certain amount of people that they actually are trans,
yeah.
right? And they actually got to get on the other side and function to function. And we all know the what's her McCloskey, Deidre McCloskey, right? Obviously, very intelligent person, right? Obviously, not a nutbag, not a basket case psychologically, but somebody. It was a man in a woman's body, and a woman in a man's body, and had to change.
Yeah, look, I'm not trying to even argue, the whole thing about transgenderism or anything like that, you know, but I don't think that they should be participating in girls' sports. That they should be participating in a sport for which they were, they were born, or the sex they were assigned at birth, as they would say, and that would be it. And the states want to enact a law. That's fine. I mean, apparently the other part of that case, which was the Idaho one, the person involved there actually dropped out of the case because it was too much pressure and spotlight. Couldn't take the heat, so she said, "I just want to finish my studies and get on with it." So yeah, it's, like you said, it's allow states to do this. Doesn't force anybody to do anything. Um, and if transgenders want to participate in something, fine. They can create their own group or whatever, and
Yeah,
do whatever.
I've always said I'd coach them. I coach people, crazy people all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'd coach it.
Yeah.
If they came up with a way to do that, and there were teams or whatever, they're kids who like to play basketball. Let's go.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean,
the other thing is, to me, what will solve the social struggle of this is when one guy I don't want to demean it, but who thinks he's a girl, right? Says, I'm going to go play football anyway. And I'm an all district linebacker, and I sacked the quarterback 52 times, and I wear a dress, right? So then you got to look at that guy differently, because, you always look at them as soft people who can't accomplish anything. If you get one who's, the state sack leader, or then people going to have to look at that entirely differently,
yeah. I mean, the plaintiff in this West Virginia case was asked why. I mean, she's a shot putter, and apparently she's pretty good for her size or an age, I guess. Why you just don't participate with the boys teams? Because how many times we've seen girls try to play on boys teams, and some are actually pretty decent, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
they find a niche, and she flatly said no, because that would betray who I am. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, the opportunity is there. I don't think the state of West Virginia is saying you can't play on a boys team. You go ahead and compete if you want to. But you were born a boy. You need to compete as a boy. So therefore, this is your option. And it's not to compete with the girls team. And that's
Right,
it. I mean, so they're not being. They made it like the report I heard today made it seem like, oh, this poor person is going to have to give up her dream, and everything she enjoys because of this ruling. It's like, no, I mean, look, you can go play on the boys team. You can go figure out some other avenue to do this. This does not end your path.
Move somewhere where they let them do it.
Right,
Connecticut
right.
lets you do it. California.
Yeah, just follow. And plenty of people have done stuff like that in the past. So yeah, so that was a big decision. Riley Gaines was very big on fighting against this. Has got an organization that works on this issue and everything like that. So a lot of women's rights groups supported this, because they don't want these man childs in their girls' locker room.
I have a lot of friends, right, that are on the other side who we agreed on this issue. Guys, people involved in sports, and like the most important thing about it is not like the high school eligibility of this kid in West Virginia. It's, the court recognized that there are boys and girls, and that boys are better athletically, and that it's okay to figure that into your rulemaking. So it's a big ruling. It's a big thing that happened.
Yeah, and then other decisions that are not as major. I mean, I figured that Trump wasn't going to win on the Lisa Cook at the Fed decision. He did win on the Slaughter decision.
You did win on Saturday. I don't. So to me, that thing is kind of weird, right? Because why is the Fed person less vulnerable to being fired than Slaughter, right? The agencies, because is that an agency? Is it an executive branch agency? What is the Fed? Because if it's not, the president appoints the members, right? That's consistent with being a federal executive branch agency. So, but this agency, he doesn't have that kind of control. I don't understand that, and I don't understand how that's constitutional and how it benefits the country.
Yeah, I thought part of it too was though that the firing of if you're going to go after the FTC, FCC, all these other agencies, you could do that. I don't think you had necessarily prove cause per se, but Lisa Cook hasn't really had they haven't gone through a trial or haven't done anything. Trump wanted her out, and so he thought he had the authority to do that. The court said no, you don't. And I think this is complicated because it does look like you've got two things here, they contradict each other.
Yeah, and I want to see the constitutional basis why the FTC and the Federal Reserve are treated differently, right? How does he have the power in one and not the other?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think part of it too, though, is.
But we've always kind of treated the Fed like it was some kind of third thing, right? And I think that's dangerous. It's so we had the chairman Powell, right, who for all of Trump's first term and most of his second, has for because he didn't like the guy, thwarted his policy goals. You can say, oh, you shouldn't have lowered rates here or there, whatever. You can have that argument. There's clearly been some opportunities in there to lower rates and jack up the economy and do what Trump wanted you to do. And he resisted it. He didn't do it. Now, I didn't elect Jerome Powell to anything or anybody on that board to anything. I did elect Trump. I did vote for him. Right. So I don't really want Jerome Powell being able to stop Trump from how he wants to run the economy. I didn't vote for him.
Yeah, but I look, I mean, I'm fine with, I'm not a fan of the Fed in general, even though my father worked for the Fed for 25 years. But, it operates as the most independent thing you have out there.
Right. And
the terms are set for the board of governors, that they have these 14-year terms or whatever. The chairman have, 4-year terms or what, and they have to be reappointed and things like that. But they do need some insulation, from politics at the federal level. There are very few presidents that actually have the economic chops to understand the intricacies of interest rate policy, the economy, and how this all works. And you need people, as much as I hate to say it, you need people who have got more expertise to deal with this and all those boring numbers that would just drive me up a wall to try to sort and figure that out. Trump thinks, and a lot of presidents, politicians, they think they know what to do, but are there better people that could be in these positions? Possibly. My father knew a lot of Fed governors. He knew a lot of Fed chairmen in his time. He didn't necessarily agree with all of them. Some of them were they didn't do a good job, and if you don't do a good job, you're not going to get reappointed. You can get, but so Powell's out, Warsh is in, but Warsh's hands are somewhat tied until we see inflation, we see gas prices going down, things like that, until he can try to go more on Trump's way. In the meantime, he's probably going to have to just tread water so he doesn't, do something that would be damaging to the economy. Economy's doing pretty good still, despite all this other nonsense that's out there. So, you don't need to try to do something that would actually kind of make it worse than it is at this point when things are actually fine. All right, we're getting low here on time, and we haven't quite gotten through things. Other comments here. So also, so you mentioned the Colorado thing. Yet another Democratic Socialist wins. There was a comment I saw, an interview, a clip I saw from CNN with Jayapal, and she talking about the Big Tent. So in essence, I guess she's saying we need to embrace the Democratic Socialists. Well, that's one way to destroy your party. I mean, Letitia James is already upset at what happened in New York, right? And Mandami and his endorsement of all these Democratic Socialists. I think she's already accused him of wrecking the Democratic Party. So you're seeing, you said earlier, talk about, you kind of have like these two Democratic parties in a sense. And that's basically what's happening, is that you've got these Democratic Socialists that are wreaking havoc in the Democratic Party. Hakeem Jeffries, warts and all, at least as a halfway reasonable guy.
He's on the other side and cannot cross the fence. He has to stay on his side of the fence.
Yeah.
So these people will soon be, if they're not already, adversaries for him.
And as you said, they're crazy.
They're crazy. They don't mind. They don't feel any political gravity. There's nothing, any of the things they want to do. There's nothing, politically holding them back. They're like, hey, and you can't really blame them. I mean, Diana DeJett's been there 20 years. Daniel Goldman was one of the most popular Democrats in Congress, right? I mean, he was embodied what they sneered at Trump, total left-winger, lawyer, brings, litigious, makes the whole thing litigious as much as he can. The people are getting beat are not, one-termers who, want to, sneaked in last time. These are established people in Congress that are getting blown away by these Democrat socialists. And, and it's never going to have the power to win nationally. So you're running into the train is speeding toward a wall, and no one can stop it.
Yeah. All right. And then along with that, Times Sienna poll that was ran. So this is likely. Okay. This is likely voters. So it's it's early.
Yeah, it's likely. It's early, and this is the high water mark for challengers, right? Because the challengers have been working on their getting the primary. They've got primary enthusiasm still going on, and they think they're going up there. But to look at your list here, Collins is not going to lose. You know that, right? We all know that. Cooper is not going to lose. The Republicans have tried everything they could think of to beat Cooper, and they can't do it. And the good thing about it is, if he gets in the Senate, that's probably one of the places he can do the least damage, right? Because he's really done a lot of damage to the state. Paxton Tallarico is not beating Paxton. That's ridiculous. Even the Democrats I talked to in Texas are like, what did we do here? Sullivan is ahead. I think that's going to hold up. I think Republicans are going to win in Alaska. Henson narrowly ahead, will probably be more ahead as time goes on. And Michael Husted, it looks like, is in good shape in Ohio.
I do like the Ohio one because, that's Brown is not the worst candidate in the world for them. I mean, he's a former
incumbent. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he has some chops there and could flip that seat potentially. So the fact that it's even early on in this somewhat meaningless poll, I mean, in essence, likely voters, they're just likely.
Yeah. And the other thing is to remember, New York Times Sienna is one of the least accurate of these. So I don't know, where that fits in here, which one they might have got all the Republicans wrong for all we know.
Right.
And notoriously poor polling outfit.
Right. And I didn't go behind. I didn't have time to go behind the numbers and see how that broke down and everything like that. Right. So, but anyway, it was just an interesting thing that I thought.
Yeah, something to talk about. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So you kind of alluded to this earlier. Trump's financial disclosure form. He really raked it in. It doesn't bother me. Is there, I don't see any violation of the emoluments clause or anything like that. Yeah,
it makes them so mad. But the thing about it is like, Obama went from, broke to $117 million while the 4 years that he made 400,000 as president, right? Biden, was clearly selling policy outcomes. And now that they're broke, right, now that he's out of office, they appear to be broke. They appear to have nothing. He's running around making speeches that, like, he can't, he goes up the wrong way. He doesn't go toward the microphone. He goes the opposite direction.
There's serious elder abuse going on over there.
That's right. That's right. They're trotting him out for all this stuff because they don't have this big family is always dependent on this level of graft and corruption, and it's not there anymore. That's really kind of a remarkable story. Who we say, he makes money. But the thing about the difference between him and Biden is he's not getting paid for policy outcomes. Right, his sons are off doing crypto market and all this kind of stuff, and they're making money, and they should make money, right? They were not bound to be broke. They didn't, they didn't promise to be broke.
Right, and as you said before, they are a brand. The name is a brand.
Yeah.
What are you supposed to do? Tuck it away for 4 years?
That's right.
That's right. That's their last name. That's their brand. Sorry, and did Trump not basically, as we figured out, that he came away from his first term with less money, less net worth than he did when he entered.
Right. That's right.
That cost him money. So, there's no doubt that the family is going all out to make this one, do whatever they can. They do a lot of stuff where, with these coins and other stuff like that, where, they do well and the investors don't. Well, that is caveat emptor. If you're
right. Once you've seen that happen a couple of times, notice that little pattern. Maybe don't buy the coin.
Yeah, look, or
the other thing about that is, like, most people who buy like the Melania coin. I was reading about this, right? So if you buy a Melania coin, do you view that as an investment? No, you view that as I have a coin that has Melania on it.
Well, if you can view it as an investment, you're probably an idiot.
Right, right. People are buying it as suvies, right? They're souvenirs.
Yeah. Yeah, so there are people who are just rabid Trump fans, and they will buy everything with his name on it, and that's fine. Go ahead and do it. If you want to spend your money, no one's going to stop you.
See, as we drive through the country, like, one of the things that I see over and over is these Trump stores, right? It's just a whole store, and it'll be like they're not usually all that big, although some of them are pretty big, but the whole store is Trump memorabilia of whatever kind. It's pretty funny, and they're popular. People are there.
That could be dangerous for my wife. I don't know. All right. Just a few other things real quickly. Student loan repayment program changes. Just a couple of options down from a bunch before, including an incentive, which I think is probably long overdue, actually, to give a lower interest rate if you go on an auto pay. Credit card companies and utilities and stuff like that, there are not too many places now where you have a bill that you cannot put it on kind of an auto pay. So you just have to make sure you have the money in your bank account, but you don't have to worry about it being late. It just automatically hits your account on a day that you designate, more or less, and it's done, and it just takes care of business. And this is very similar to that. And the government's basically saying, we'll give you a little discount on the interest rate to collect that money. And they've gone after, I guess, the graduate level, loans and stuff like that. And they're trying to make those less sketchy. So, we all know that the whole student loan program has been a big scam for the college and universities. So
I think there should be no student loan program at all. I think that the federal government should not spend one penny on student loans. And it sounds cold and cruel and whatnot, but what would happen if you did that? Okay, the price of college would go way down, right? Because people, they would realize the students can't pay. The students are paying the exorbitant rate only because they can get these student loans, right? If they can't get the loans at all, they can't pay it. Okay, what else would happen in college? You would get rid of the African queer studies, literature, basket weaving majors, and you would get to hard majors that people could make money out of, because they would realize that, like, if this has got to be a profit center for me. I'm doing this, I'm paying out money, but when I come out on the other side, I'm going to be, substantially more marketable professionally, and I'm able to make money. So what'll get lost a little bit is the Socrates, the like sitting and thinking aspect of university life, but that can come back in a healthier environment, right? Because right now the whole thing's spinning out of control. Enrollment's down, and people are in this debt that for decades and stuff. So you have a deal where you have something you can actually fix, but you need to get rid of, if you're going to put a bunch of government money in it, the price is going to keep going up and the quality is going to keep coming down, and no one has to address any of that, these economic disparities, because there's government money pumping through it.
Yeah, look, the BYU's tuition is $3,444 for 12 plus credits a semester. It's double that if you're not a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is still a bargain. It doesn't matter what, you probably are likely to not need a loan when prices are like that. The way the church operates that school, and they don't have to muck around with those federal officials and all the rules and regulations about student loans. So yeah, can it be done? Yeah, so look to what the private colleges, some of these have been doing, and how they operate and how they function and how they are able to get students to attend college and university at a lower cost without a lot of debt, without any or a lot of debt burden, instead of the Harvards and all these other guys of the world saying, we're going to give you all these scholarships, so that instead of paying $50,000 a semester, you only have to pay $30,000 a semester. Well, whoop-de-doo, your education is not worth 30 grand a year, but you're basically just adding money. You're making money off these kids hand over fist. Right. So yeah, the college student loan program has just become kind of the big grift by the college, by the system, right? All right, wrap up here. Trump announced, I didn't even realize this, Trump announces a midterm convention in Dallas in September. It's like, what are we doing?
He's been talking about this for a long time. It hasn't been done for a while. It could be interesting because, like, it's hard to sort out. Like if you live in our area, how many people do you think know whether they live in the 11th district of Virginia or the 10th district or the 8th district? Everybody got to go look it up, right? So here's a way to say, here's your congressman, here's the guy we put up, here's him giving a speech, here's people giving speeches about him, and sort of scope the promotion of these candidates and raise their profile. It could fall flat on its face like all these things, but I think it's an interesting idea. I think if it works, you'll see a Democrat win next cycle.
Yeah, it sounds like an expensive proposition.
Well, you'll see one next cycle anyway, because it'll be presidential. But
yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. Wall Street Journal pointed out that the deputy mayor of Paris is blaming the U.S. air conditioning for their heat wave.
Just buy it. I was reading this thing this morning. They think that you'll get respiratory disease if you have air conditioning on and all this stuff, and they're like, you can't do that for too long. It's dangerous, right? And it's like, we do it all the time.
And we have a long history of using air conditioning now.
Yeah, a long history. And it's like this is another great thing that came from Louisiana, air conditioning.
So
the great Wilfred Carrier in Baton Rouge.
Oh, how about that? Well, Carrier Company is a good company.
Yeah.
So, and then finally, I didn't put this down, I think, originally, but I just want to say, so we've got a big game today, U.S. versus Bosnia-Herzegovina. We should win that game in the World Cup. So go USA, Team USA. They're looking good so far. We're moving towards the point where the competition is going to get tougher. So how much longer they've got, I don't know, but it's fun to watch them on our soil playing in the World Cup. So support them any way we can.
Yeah, I'm driving around a lot. I get to listen to a little radio, And these people keep coming on my radios talking about the sports people, like, could they actually win? And like people with accents, right? So they're from somewhere else and have been watching soccer from somewhere else their whole life, are saying yes, they could win. They are good enough. It's like, it's not, because like we've had our hopes up like for a lot of World Cups, and and we get, we think we're good, and then we get killed easily, right? But this time, like, all the experts seem to be lining up and saying not that we will win it, but that we could, that we have a team capable of competing at that level. And I've never really heard them say that at that with this frequency and this certainty before. So I'm beginning to think I might have to get on that wagon.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us. Hope you enjoy the show. We went a little long today than normal. I just want to say in closing that as we come up on July 4th, to please, there's a lot of turmoil in this country. There's a lot of political divide that we have. But this is a time to come together. We're celebrating America's 250th anniversary. So, think about it. Go read up on the Constitution, Declaration of Independence. Remember how great a country this really is, and what a privilege it is to live in this country at this time. Many of us will not be around for the 300th, and so it's just kind of our last hurrah for this. But we do live in this wonderful country with freedoms and possibilities and opportunities that no other countries have. And so we really need to be grateful for that. So I am. And so I wish that my wish this week is that you spend time with your family, go out and enjoy fireworks, do whatever you want, however you have a tradition to celebrate the 4th of July. Make it a big one, make it a great one. Have a great weekend. We're going to be off next week, so we will see you in about 2 weeks. Thanks a lot, everybody. See you then.